Stop going after kids. New video by Think Before You Sleep just dropped. Let's take a look at this. Stop going after kids. Let's see the thumbnail. Oh, we got Dylan Mulvaney, and it just says the word wrong. Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad we clarified that this person is, in fact, wrong on everything. You know, it's not like Bud Light had to give us that answer by losing millions of dollars. I think we found out this person was wrong when a company that was a staple of the alcohol industry had one of the biggest fall-offs ever seen in that world, so... yeah. Stop going after kids. I'm gonna have to go ahead and agree with that statement. It's a statement that, you know, like I said, I thought it was overused for a while. You know, stop going after kids, leave the kids alone. But it's like, again, the fact that it ever had to be said in the first place means that it truly can't be oversaid, you know? And so, yeah, let me refresh this so I don't get that stupid scroll bar on there.
Should trans people have rights? Well, I don't know. I feel like since we live in a country that was founded upon the principle that we're all created equal and deserve all the same rights and liberties, and since anyone who has ever opposed rights for minorities has always been remembered as a bigot and a villain of history, it seems to me that the simple answer is yes.
Oh no, someone tell this guy.
All right, hold on a second. So because they're viewed as someone who's bad in history, that they're actually bad? Listen, history is written by the victors. This is a known point. Everyone knows that if slave owners somehow didn't lose the right to own a slave, then we'd all be fine with slavery, okay? This is, I don't know. It's just saying that someone is remembered unfavorably in history, to me, is something that you have to actually show me what the person thinks and give me multiple sources and like a full, unbiased analysis of what they actually fought for, and then, you know, contextualize that with history, and then I'll give you my value judgment. Don't just say that people don't like them.
And since anyone who has ever opposed rights for minorities has always been remembered as a bigot and a villain of history, it seems to me that the simple answer is yes.
Oh no, someone tell this guy that these were all Democrats.
The problem with saying that these people were all Democrats is like, yeah, you can say that, okay, Democrats used to be racist, but it's like, okay, everyone used to be racist. So I feel like as much as I love Think Before You Sleep, that argument also isn't great, you know?
Democrats were pro-slavery, the Democrats were the party of the KKK, and they were in favor of Jim Crow laws.
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone actually on the left, when you tell them that Democrats are the real racists, really they stop and take a moment and say, holy shit, oh my God, that's crazy. Holy shit, I'm no longer a Democrat. Because everybody knows that, like, yeah, segregation is bad. So they're not going to look at what their current party stands for and what the current party used to stand for and feel upset about where they are now because of how the party used to operate. Like, that doesn't actually convince anybody.
Not a good look. Somebody has to question these people about what a right is, because I feel like they don't know the definition of that
That
word.
is true. This is a good argument. Nobody knows what a human right is. Everybody claims that everything is a human right, yet no one actually knows what the fuck a human right is.
So let's look at a primary source, like the...
And I know this is true because you can just kind of say anything, which you think that people should have just because you're a kind person, and then say that it's a right. You know, you can just say that, you know, water is a right, food is a right, all these things. And look, maybe it is, you know, but you the fact that you can just kind of say it and no one knows what a right is, I think is a little not so good, you know? Because then the issue is that I think claiming that, you know, whenever you claim that something is a human right, I feel like you kind of open up the conversation to where because you're saying one thing is a human right, you can slowly make it so that everything slowly becomes a human right, you know? Which... I think it would be cool if everyone had clothes and water and food and shelter and healthcare and white monster energies and cereal and movies and TV and Hulu and Netflix and, you know, blowjobs and sloppy topic. Like, all these things would be nice, but it's like, at what point do we start saying that you do not get this for doing nothing, you have to go and earn it, you know? But sex in public is a human right. But like, that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, that is like, you can slowly sort of rationalize your way into saying crazy shit like that.
The 14th Amendment says, no state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. This basically means the government needs to treat everyone equally. But turns out that many of our...
Wait, what? No state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws?
This basically means the government needs to treat everyone equally. But
that's actually not true at all. So that's just not what that means. We can read this and then still extrapolate that you're wrong. This thing literally says you are not going to deny the equal protection of the laws. Not that you're going to treat everyone equally. You will protect the laws equally.
Equal protection of the laws. This basically means the government needs to treat everyone equally. But turns out that many of our conservative friends
What was written and what you said are two different things.
Is he going to explain which constitutional rights that conservatives want to take away from trans people? No, he's not, because they aren't trying to do that. What's curious, though, is I can think of a very important constitutional right that trans activists have tried to take away from people for the past decade.
Free speech.
Criticizing trans
That's my guess.
in like 2021 or 2022 would get you deplatformed.
Exactly.
I actually think the trans stuff goes as far back as 2019, and radical leftists have been arguing to repeal or...
Okay, so I feel like whenever people talk about the Constitution, it's to this vague, it's done to vaguely appeal to, like, historical knowledge, and I feel like it's not actually about if it matters or not, Because people talk about the Constitution when they're arguing a certain thing, but they don't actually care about the Constitution. They care about it because they think most people care about it, so they'll argue for it. And I don't want to take any person who doesn't actually care about the Constitution's opinion on the Constitution seriously. You know what I'm saying? That is something I will never do. In the same way that someone who doesn't care about religion, I will not listen to them when they start criticizing religion or they start giving an argument about religion when they themselves don't care about it. Doesn't mean they have to be religious, but they just don't care about it, right? Like, there's this guy who I think is an atheist. His name is Alex something. He's like a very good arguer, debater, whatever. I think it's Alex Smith. Is this who it is? Is that his name? It's like Alex. I'm just gonna look up Alex the Atheist, and then his name should come up. Alex the Atheist. Is that his name? Alex O'Connor. Yeah. So he is not religious, but he has thought a lot about it and cares about the topic of religious debate and philosophy, right? So I'll take what he has to say serious. It's the people who have never thought about religion once in their life and just kind of vaguely view it as this thing that takes away from your schedule on Sunday and cuts into your gaming time, who want to get up here and talk about religion and say that, oh, you're being mean to trans people. Well, doesn't religion tell you that you should be nice to people? Let me put on my thinking cap. It's like, you're obviously someone who could not be less interested in this conversation and are only using this in bad faith to convince me of something that you have no actual position on.
Circumvent First Amendment protections for over a decade now.
Yeah, actually, Jesus said, love everyone, so let your kid get their body parts chopped off. Like, the people who will use that argument are people who, they don't actually have opinions on this stuff. They haven't thought deeply about it at all. They just want to leverage the fact that you care about it against you.
That being said, today we're going to talk about an up-and-coming 19-year-old YouTuber who goes by Hadi Rahim, who's had a couple of hit videos recently because, thanks to the whole Dean Withers crowd, a lot of people are getting their political takes from influencers who just barely became adults. But the reason this person caught my interest is because he makes videos that are, for the most part, pretty well put together, and he's very good at appearing that he's very knowledgeable in his field. To give a backhanded compliment, he sounds super smart if you don't have much prior knowledge in these areas, and if you don't have a lot of critical thinking skills that would cause you to question certain things. However, if you do the slightest bit of fact-checking, you can see he has no idea what he's doing. That's the real problem, and the illusion of intelligence or competence from political pundits has become quite annoying. For example,
the scientific community largely agrees that gender-affirming care, even for minors, saves lives. This scientific consensus, and yes, it's a scientific consensus, this isn't just an appeal to an authority.
There's this thing called the survivorship bias, right? Where people who are trans, basically, when they're polled after they have had their affirming surgery, and they say if they like it or not, they will say, I think it's something along the lines that more of them who have had it, they say that they don't regret it, than more people say they do regret it. Now, this is true, but the issue is that there's a survivorship bias. Now, because they have a high suicide rate, so the issue is that you're asking people if they regret something, but the people who actually regret it, only a small amount of them are going to live to say they regret it. Most of them will delete themselves, which is it's a sad thing, but when we're talking about, if this stuff actually saves lives, I think that's highly contentious.
This is the result of numerous peer-reviewed studies that found that gender-affirming care has led to significantly lower rates of depression and suicidality among people with dysphoria.
It's something like, there's like a plane crash, and I forget the example that's used, but it's like, there's a plane crash, and it's like 100% of people say they're okay. But it's like, yeah, well, the rest of them died, so they can't say that they're okay,
I mean, arguing
it's something like that. I forget.
In favor of consensus is also a logical fallacy, just like appeals to authority. Lots of people believing something doesn't necessarily mean it's true.
That's also a good
Especially on a
point,
politically
yeah.
charged issue where there is a lot of censorship of dissenting opinion. I mean, they tried to kick Jordan Peterson out of his university and went after his clinical license for extremely moderate takes on this.
Yeah, well, the scientific community also believes, or I shouldn't say the scientific community, the medical community, they believe that it's okay to prescribe amphetamines to 12-year-olds. Like, that's retarded. That's something that I think completely delegitimizes a lot of the industry. Look at the Sackler family, the scientific community, the medical community. These are people who are prescribing opioid medications with insanely high levels of addiction and death to people because they have back pain. You could go into a fucking pill mill, get yourself oxycodone or OxyContin, and then go home with no problem if you just say that you have a fucking back issue. So if we're going to talk about the medical industry and them, saying that things are okay, I mean, listen, we have, like, to this day, it's super easy to get, some person to say that your kid has ADHD and then to go in and then get an amphetamine prescription. This isn't something where you have to go through leaps and hurdles to get it. It's the same thing, I think, with puberty blockers, because puberty blockers are viewed as something where, because you're not having this ultra-invasive surgery where they are mutilating parts of your body, that it's somehow okay, right? You're just stopping puberty. You're just delaying puberty. But you can never get those years back. You will be incredible. Your growth will be set back. You will be socially maladapted. You will face consequences that can't even be, like, quantified. So I don't take the medical consensus on certain issues super seriously. Obviously, overall, if we're talking about treatments for diseases, I think a lot of modern medicine has been life-saving and crucial for betterment of, most people. The lifespan has increased. But, there are some things where I think if your bullshit detector is going off and you can explain pretty reasonably why, you might be in the right. And I think I explained why for things like certain stimulant medications for ADHD and ADD, and that's just my opinion.
Issue, one of which Hadi plays in his video on trans people.
Kids are confused enough when they're growing up. I think to add gender confusion to that, which we're doing very, very rapidly, is going to destroy 15 people for every one it saves.
I'm surprised this guy Hadi is so concerned with stuff like constitutional rights, but doesn't mention the horrendous amount of censorship around this issue. Well, he's only 19 and probably just started caring about this stuff a year ago after he took Political Science 101, so he might not be aware of the censorship stuff because they stopped doing a lot of it in 2023. But according to him, there is a massive consensus in the scientific world that gender-affirming care works. Maybe this data is so correct that it should be criminal to speak out against it, and there are totally no conflicts of interest here, like how much of a moneymaker this all is because gender-affirming care is expensive. That being said, let's look at the studies. Hadi flashes 11 studies across the screen, which I can almost guarantee that he didn't read, especially considering that most of these studies are paywalled, and this one even disagrees with his point. But more importantly, I looked over every single...
What does this say? Medical gender reassignment is not enough to improve functioning and to relieve psychiatric comorbidities among adolescents with gender dysphoria?
One, and yes, after they did...
Well, it's almost like there's a bigger issue there.
Gender-affirming care, like giving hormones to children, they reportedly saw some improvement in mental health. Well, except for this study that said there was basically no change, and the ones who already had good mental health before the study still had good mental health after, and the ones with bad mental health still had bad mental health after the study.
Yeah, there's no way he read this too because it literally says transsexual, so that's like something that is not even politically correct to say.
Aside of that, the biggest problem with all these studies is that they don't test gender-affirming care against other types of treatment. So it could be the case that children talking to a therapist is twice as effective at improving mental health as taking hormones that will sterilize them. Because he doesn't show how these treatments perform against others in terms of gender dysphoria, all of this data is very weak evidence of Hadi's points. And the constant overconfidence in how correct he is as he shows useless data makes him look very uneducated. Anyway, let's continue with his statements on the effectiveness of gender-affirming care.
It's also way less harmful than suicide or self-affliction, which unfortunately many untreated patients with gender dysphoria
Wait, what did he say?
suicide or self-affliction.
The effectiveness of gender-affirming care.
It's also way less harmful than suicide or self-affliction.
This is better than suicide. That's what he just said.
Which unfortunately many untreated patients with gender dysphoria fall victim to. So when
Dude, it's way better to cut someone's dick off than to kill them. It's a pretty low bar there that you're passing. A low bar of quality of life. So you can either die or cut your dick off. Which one would you rather do? Probably cut my dick off.
when red states ban gender
What a
affirming
fucking
care
joke.
to protect kids, they're actually doing the opposite.
Where's the data for that? You had studies for everything else, but no studies for the most important thing, which is to prove that lack of gender-affirming care is actually costing lives? What number of lives is this affecting? You made a whole 20-minute video talking about this, and you don't have one paper that proves that this is the problem? I mean, that's why we're doing the gender-affirming care, right? It's to save lives. Why else are you showing elementary school students videos like this?
Oh my God, this is what public schools in Superior School District, Wisconsin are teaching 4th and 5th graders, dear God. Superior School District. Doesn't seem too superior.
Hi, baby. Are you a boy or a girl?
Funny you should ask, Sid. The way your body looks on the outside is only part of the story. And your gender doesn't always.
Yeah, you know this is instantly capped because you have a small Indian child educating the fucking doctors.
Match the sex you were called when you were born.
Okay.
So
Why are you listening to a small Indian child and not the doctor?
if this is all a naturally occurring
What?
phenomenon, then why do you have to teach young, impressionable kids about it en masse? The ones who it applies to would know it internally, and they can seek help as needed. But anyway, these people are always silent when it comes to proving their claims about not allowing kids going to gender-affirming care, causing them to die. Personally, I think it's because they have zero or very weak evidence that this is the case. As when people have tried to show data for this, like Noah Sampson, the participants being studied are all adults, not children.
Yeah, that's why they say that whenever you can't do something that is regarding, like, letting trans people be naked in public for pride events, that you're killing them. It's literally like if you don't give them whatever they ask for, you're killing people. If you don't capitulate to their demands, then you're basically killing trans people, right? This is what they're saying. They constantly use this. They leverage the lives of people in order to make an argument, right?
And they have tons of more important factors for...
And this is a common thing that people will do in politics, but where they'll basically say that, like, if you don't do this, you're killing people. Like, if you don't make laws around gun control, then you're killing children. And I just think that's just weak argumentation.
Poor mental health, like homelessness, alcoholism, and evidence of child sexual abuse. I can imagine that treating those would be a lot more effective at preventing suicidal ideation than hormones, because what the...
And it's crazy no one says this about, like, alcohol, right? Because alcohol is one of the most leading causes of death in America, and no one is getting up there and saying, hey, you're not voting against alcohol, you're literally killing people, right? So it's totally ideological and not objective.
What the hell do hormones have to do
Because if it was objective, it would be things like, you know, the most normalized vices.
with solving more serious mental health problems like addiction?
It's also been found to be safe. Side effects can cause harm, but they're honestly just as harmful as some of the side effects of other elective procedures.
What the hell? Is this guy high? The kind of gender-affirming care noted in those studies was hormone replacement therapy, and that shit sterilizes you. That's a pretty important side effect.
Is he fucking
And they're doing
high?
this to kids as young as 13 years old from what I've seen. Actually, later in his video, he talks about a kid who got HRT at 14 years old. Like, how do you make a video about conservatives and dance around their main issue with the transgender stuff? He never counter-argues against his opposition's points on sterilization in the video. Okay, this Star Wars meme on screen is great.
And by the way, when it comes to trans kids, very, very, very few even get surgical interventions. This recent study found that only 2.1 per 100.
Yeah, this is like, I think this is shifting the goalpost, because when you talk about the mutilation and saying that it's like, oh, that happens rarely. Okay, well then what does happen? And then they're like, well, it could be hormone blockers, it could be hormones, it could be like social changes where you're basically forcing a school district to give your kids certain pronouns. Like, I think any intervention at all is not good, right? Like, I again, like, just bringing up the most extreme thing and saying, well, that's not happening, so then therefore, you know, your fears are not, they're boundless, or whatever whatever they say. It's like, it still is bad.
100,000 minors aged 15 to 17 got surgeries. That number is even smaller for minors aged 13 to 14, at only 0.1 per 100,000.
I mean, here's the problem too, right? Here's another issue, is they're saying that it doesn't happen that much, right? Conservatives' worst fear of kids cutting their dicks off is not happening. It's not even happening. Okay, well, let's say it was. Let's say that it was happening. You know, let's just say it was, which it is, but you're saying it's not happening that much. Let's say it was happening more. Do you think this person would defend that or argue against that? What do you think he would say? He'd probably say, okay, well, it is happening more, even though I said it's not happening, but now it's happening and it's good. His argument wouldn't be that it's no longer not happening. His argument would be that it's happening and it's good. That's what it would, yeah.
Researchers could find no data on minors under 12 getting surgery. Now, this data is from 2019, and the numbers could have risen in the years since, but if you quintuple these numbers, we're still talking about less than 300 or 400 people.
Okay, but let's say instead of quintuple, let's say they 100x. Let's say they 100x. Is that still, like, is it good or is it bad? I don't care if it's happening or not. I want your moral stance on it. Because it could happen, it could not happen. We have to be on the same page of whether or not it's happening, it needs to not happen because it's bad.
It should be
It shouldn't be happening at all. What a dumb argument. Yeah, I agree.
0 kids getting surgical interventions
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
for this.
I know a lot of people instinctively
Yeah.
say, we should ban the procedures until they're 18 or 21. And people who say this are just basing their opinions on vibes.
Oh man, this guy's about 6 months away from arguing why the age of consent law shouldn't exist for sex. You know, because it's just about vibes.
Shouldn't the age that you are allowed to have sex be based on when you reach sexual maturity? Why is it considered such a moral crime and a sick thing to like a 16-year-old?
Yeah, anyway, let's continue talking about why this guy thinks that kids should be allowed to go on hormone replacement therapy.
Why is, like... I feel like if I'm going to say something predatory, I'd take my persona off the screen to not make my community look like everything that people think we are, you know? People are like, oh, furries are predators, and then he's like, let me show my furry on screen while I say that. Take it off.
If a 16-year-old with gender dysphoria goes to a doctor, and the doctor comes to the conclusion that hormone replacement therapy would significantly improve their mental health and even save their life, and their parents go with them and consent, what's wrong with them receiving treatment? I thought you guys were all about parental rights. Why should the government get between a
Again, so this is, he's doing the thing that I said that they do with religion, right? I thought you guys cared about religion. Be nice. I thought you cared about parental rights. Let the kid be trans. It's not about that specifically. Like, when people talk about parental rights, your parent doesn't have the right to put you up for a fucking slave auction. Obviously, there are stipulations.
child, a parent, and their doctor. I thought you
The parental rights is that the kid doesn't have to be indoctrinated with this shit. That's the right of the
small
parents.
government.
I mean, tattoos aren't even permanent, technically, and a 13-year-old wouldn't be allowed to get one even if their parents consented. But you know, why have any law that supersedes parental consent? Let's just make it so kids are allowed to drink a 6-pack of beer every day if their parents say
that's
they can.
based.
It's not like there are any mentally deranged parents who would do things like trick their kids into consenting to sexual abuse, because stories like that totally don't exist on a podcast called We're All Insane. And certainly, no parent has ever groomed their kid into being trans.
You're a boy, right?
No, I'm a girl.
Who told you you're a girl?
Mommy.
The state of California says that I have to pay for the chemical and physical castration of my son as child support. I'm not going to pay that child support. I'm not going to pay anything to hurt my son.
And that means you'll be going to prison?
California is going to send me to prison for that.
The world isn't black and white, and there are certain limitations that we have on certain beliefs, because making
Bro, he married a psychopath. Jesus.
them a free-for-all where anything goes is stupid. Like, pot should be legal like alcohol is, but maybe it's a terrible idea to make crystal meth or fentanyl available at the store for recreational use.
All right, chill. All right, chill.
Reality is that kids who get these procedures do so with their parents' expressed permission, who have their children's best interest in mind. No 5-year-old is walking into a doctor's office saying, I feel like a girl, and walking out with a gallon of estrogen. Children generally cannot get medical care without their parents' consent. You all know this. Why are you acting like this is not the case?
I mean, kids can get an abortion without their parents' consent, and as far as I'm aware, kids are allowed to get gender-affirming care without their parents' consent, to an extent. In fact, in places like California schools, they were trying to hide from parents that they were doing that, which is why people started getting outraged at school board.
Well, they can also, I forget what I read, but there was something that where a teacher was referring to a child or a student in her classroom by a different set of pronouns, that the teacher was calling the boy a she, and the father, like, discovered it. Like, it was being hidden.
Meetings.
And I found out after 2.5 years, they had been transitioning my son secretly behind my back. So I would bring my son to Pinkerton Middle School in Capel in boys' clothes, and they would give him a dress and tell him to use the girls' bathroom.
It's not like this is unheard of. Encouraging kids to be trans without notifying their parents is believed to be moral by a lot of leftists.
So if you guys could change the Constitution in one way, how would you change it?
Rights to abortion, like transgender rights to have surgery without necessarily parental consent.
Not to mention, you had Keffels and Eli Ehrlich openly trafficking hormones to children. Stuff like that is why people are mad. A bunch of strangers are trying to convince their children they will die unless they get super invasive medical interventions that have permanent life-altering side effects. Okay, so moving on. Now we're going to talk about trans athletes. Apparently that's just a silly Republican grift to get votes because every other issue was unpopular.
This wasn't always a top issue among Republicans.
Yeah, I love when they say that. They're like, Republicans now care about women's sports, just so they can get votes. It's like, well, I feel like maybe that's somewhat true, but regardless of if it's true or not, whether or not they just started caring, I feel like it's still definitely the case that men should not be competing in women's sports. And the part of me that thinks it's not really a grift to get votes is because when they were pushing for it, when they were pushing for men to be allowed in women's sports, that wasn't a grift either. either. So it's just like you're counteracting the negative force, you know? And sometimes you have to counteract it with more force. So maybe it's not a grift. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Forget about that for a second. 100% he's right by saying that we you know, the men competing in women's sports issue was not what was needed to win the election, for sure. It was definitely more about immigration than anything.
Voters. The current trans panic is very new, dating back to like 2022.
I mean, the trans stuff has been a hot topic for like a decade.
That's retarded. This guy's a newborn.
You even used a popular Ben Shapiro segment from like 2015 in your video, so maybe Google Trends isn't the most accurate measurement here.
In 2020, they fearmongered about
Dude, I used to think this clip was Aura. When this fucking dude puts his hand around Ben's neck and he's like, I'll put you in the hospital. Dude, and then he's like, oh man. The internet used to be a crazy place.
Maybe Google Trends isn't the most accurate measurement here.
In 2020, they fearmongered about BLM, but most Americans
Dude, BLM was fucking terrorism!
Actually supported the protests, so...
No, they did not!
That didn't work.
Bro, you think people support this? Okay, listen. What is this? Hold on.
About BLM, but
let's see his graph.
Most Americans actually...
Also, this isn't fucking fear-mongering about BLM. Interest over time for the search term Black Lives Matter. The fact that this rose isn't because of fear-mongering. It rose because people were literally pushing for it. It was hashtag BLM. The people who supported it were the reason this went up.
He supported the protest.
Let's see. Most Americans express support for the Black Lives Matter movement. This is not protest, this is the movement!
So that didn't work.
Okay, so how many people knew the protests in 2020 were actually riots? The media spent a ton of time calling them peaceful to confuse people.
In the summer of 2021, the new boogeyman was critical race theory, and while it did lead to Republicans winning the Virginia governorship, it failed to gain much traction beyond that. The outrage was a fad. But by around the summer of 2022 to like early 2023, they finally figured out that if they fearmongered about trans people, they could actually get tens of thousands of working class Americans to vote for the...
This is just... Okay, holy shit, this guy's research is so shit. He just typed in the word trans as a search term, saw that it went up, and then used this as proof of more people fear-mongering trans people. You can look up trans for any number of reasons. It doesn't mean that it's like specifically because more people are afraid of them now.
Party that bails out the rich and continually...
Like, this could be, I don't know, like, this could be Leah Thomas, or this could be any number of things. It doesn't... Oh my god, this is just shit research.
Of thousands of working class Americans to vote for the party that bails out the rich and continually tries to take away health care.
What are you talking about? Race relations and black fatigue is one of the hottest topics right now, especially during the time he was making this video because of Carmelo Anthony. Also, Democrats bail out rich people too. Every politician does that because they won't get voted in if they don't give favors to rich supporters. Consider reading the Dictator's Handbook for more info on that. Also, Obama made healthcare way more expensive, so that's his legacy to Americans. And this is all as if Democrats haven't been using the LGBT stuff to get votes and distract people from more pressing issues for the past decade and a half. Certainly, there aren't a bunch of companies that grift off of trans issues as a PR strategy, and there definitely isn't an entire month out of every year that has the sole purpose of boosting sales for a number of corporations. All right, let's talk about sports.
Okay, but the problem with forcing trans athletes to compete only with members of their biological sex is that you're going to run into the exact same problem with trans men. This is literally what happened in Texas when Mac Beggs, a trans man who was in the process of transitioning by taking testosterone, won the state high school women's wrestling championship in 2017. Transphobes use this as an example to go, see, look, this poor, innocent girl is being beaten up by this violent trans person. Except this isn't a biological man competing against a woman. It's a trans man being forced to compete with women because Texas state law prevented him from competing with men, where he wouldn't have had an unfair advantage. This is literally the result of policies that you advocate for.
Okay, I think the main thing that people want to see as the solution is that there's like a separate league. You know?
You're either being dishonest or you're too stupid to understand.
This is a bad argument. Nobody cares about women competing in men's sports, just like nobody really cares if women use the men's bathroom to skip the line for the women's bathroom. There's a certain direction that people want these rules to...
Wait, what did he say?
Men's bathroom. Nobody cares about women competing in men's sports, just like nobody really cares if women use the men's bathroom to skip the line for the women's bathroom.
What?
There's a certain direction that people want these rules to go in, and just like how Japan has women-only train cars, I don't think people really care if these laws were applied unequally across the sexes. So just fix the law so that it doesn't apply universally.
But how many trans athletes are even out there? Well, according to...
I truly don't even understand what he's even saying here. I know Sean sometimes watches these videos to see what people have to say about his videos. I don't know what you said, so try to say this again in a way that, like, makes sense, my boy. Anyway, my point with this is I get what the guy whose videos this is, like, the argument he's making, right? He's saying women, biological women should be in biological women's sports and biological men should be in biological women's sports. And the problem with this is that this girl, I think it's a biological woman who's transitioning to be a man, right? Is playing in the sport with other women. I understand that he's saying if this is what conservatives want, biological sexes should just be against the same sex, right? I don't think that's specifically what I want. I mean, maybe it would be good in general, but I don't think this is fair. And I think the way to fix it is probably to make like a separate category for trans people, right? That seems more fair. One category for trans women, one category for trans men.
You advocate for.
Well, I feel like that would be easier.
You're either being dishonest or you're too stupid to understand.
And if that isn't a good solution, then please tell me what you would do.
This is a bad argument.
I think, I think that regardless of if you have a solution, I don't think that that you not having a solution takes away your right to highlight the problem.
You're either being dishonest or you're too stupid to understand.
This is a bad argument. Nobody cares about women competing in men's sports, just like nobody really cares if women use the men's bathroom to skip the line for the women's bathroom. There's a certain direction that people want these rules to go in, and just like how Japan has women-only train cars, I don't think people really care if these laws were applied unequally across the sexes. So just fix the law so that it doesn't apply universally.
But how many trans athletes are even out there? Well, according to Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, of the 510,000 athletes competing at the collegiate level, fewer than 10 publicly identify as transgender.
This kid must listen to Dean Withers because that's his dumb argument too. The current number doesn't matter because, one, women shouldn't have to change with men in their locker rooms, and
that's true. Yeah, that's probably not enough to make a league at all.
It's transgender.
No, you definitely cannot make a league.
This kid must listen to Dean.
So what do you do with that?
Withers, because that's
what
his
do you
dumb
do with
argument
those 10?
Too. The current number doesn't matter because, one, women shouldn't have to change with men in their locker rooms, and two, if this goes unchecked, then eventually the number of trans athletes will increase until all the top athletes in women's sports are trans. It can take 100 people to make a competition, but only one of them can win first place, so there doesn't have to be that many trans athletes for it to be a problem. But none of that matters because all these people are hypocrites because Trump used to be pro-trans, and now he's grifting for votes.
The anti-trans crusade got Donald Trump, a man who used to passively support trans rights, into becoming the most dangerous threat to their existence. Don't believe me? Here's him in 2015 on bathroom bills.
Do you have any transgender people working in your organization?
I don't know.
No?
I really don't know. I probably do. I really don't know.
So if Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses?
That is correct.
Here's him now.
Gender insanity, child abuse, chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth, and so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. Mutating their physical appearance, mutilation of minor youth. Can you believe this? A concept that was never heard of. Under my leadership, this madness will end. Thank you very much.
Trump actually walked that statement about bathrooms back like a year later, so the change didn't happen after the great trans craze of 2022.
Well, I think there's also something different where I think Trump and Caitlyn Jenner know each other. So I think it's different. When you highlight one person, you can give any single person special treatment in almost any single way, right? It's like if there's a long line to get into a party, but you know the person who's hosting the party, you can skip the line. I feel like it's different. And also, yeah, Caitlyn is an adult. That's another thing. So I think what he was specifically talking about in that video is regarding kids and the way that the conversation around trans identity shifted from adults having the right to use bathrooms to children having the right to, not be indoctrinated.
Again,
that was the difference.
Is this kid smoking? Trans issues.
Holy shit. A fucking bird just hit my window. Oh my God. That thing is dead as shit.
Were much different in 2016 than they are today. Outside of a conversation about bathrooms and maybe gender-neutral parenting, there wasn't tons of talk about giving hormones to kids at that point, so it's reasonable that Trump would expand on or change his views on this by 2024. And contrary to what these lefties say because they're too busy calling everyone Nazis, most people don't mind trans people. What they don't like are the activists and people going after kids with drugs that will sterilize them. Well, they also don't like pride parades and family-friendly drag shows because they're sexually inappropriate. The good news, though, is that Hottie thought this bad take about Trump changing was so good that he did it twice.
This is Nancy Mace, a South Carolina Republican congresswoman who has recently become obsessed with trans people. Ever since Congress got its first ever trans member, she's been trying to ban her from using women's bathrooms in the Capitol, and she succeeded. She regularly uses slurs for trans people, calls allies groomers, all in the name of protecting women's spaces. The thing is that this is
the fuck? Jesus.
Allies, and she succeeded.
Wait.
She regularly uses slurs for trans people, calls allies groomers, all in the name of protecting women's spaces.
Damn. Bro, what even is politics about? Like, what does this person, like, actually do? I actually don't know what this person does. I guess besides this.
The thing is that this is all
my state, by the way. What state?
And she succeeds. First ever trans member. She's been trying to ban her from using women's bathrooms in the Capitol, and she succeeded.
Wait, what state?
She regularly
what's South Carolina?
Uses slurs for trans people, calls allies groomers, all in the name of protecting women's spaces. The thing is that this is all just a grift. Nancy Mace used to be supportive of trans rights as recently as
oh shit
2 years ago.
Well, I'm pro transgender rights. I'm pro LGBTQ. Just don't go to the extreme with our kids. Our kids
define extremism there for me.
Sex change surgery, the hormone blockers that sterilize our children. We shouldn't be doing that when a child is prepubescent or going through puberty. Let that child go through the natural process of life and let them make that permanent decision when they're older. Now, if they want to take on a different pronoun or a different gender identity or grow their hair out or wear a dress or wear pants or do those things as a minor, those are all things that I think most people would support. Be who you want to be, but don't make those permanent changes when it's a child.
Why'd she shift? Simple. To fundraise and get attention. It's disgusting.
Where was the shift? This incredibly moderate position that she has here is
Sean,
the one that
what do you mean, where was the shift? What the fuck do you mean, where was the shift? Bro, the shift was saying, no, I support trans people, and then going on to say tranny like 10 times on Twitter 2 or 3 years later. That is a shift. Now, the question is the shift warranted? And I would say, probably, when you look at how the shift in transgender, like, behavior has shifted, the response to that behavior also is, I think, completely warranted.
And calling bigoted this whole video. It seems like she's pretty consistent on her beliefs, though, considering that you've shown nowhere in this video that she was ever in favor of trans women in female bathrooms. You can say that adult men should be allowed to undergo...
I think that's just a little dishonest, right? I think saying where's the shift, it's a shift in the behavior.
Transgender...
in the approach.
...surgery, while also being uncomfortable if men start entering women's bathrooms. And let me be clear on this, slight tangent. Politicians are generally bad people and hypocrites. So with that in mind, you should never vote for a politician because you think they're an honest person. You should vote for politicians because of the values they're forced to promote to stay in power. Anyway, the arrogance that this guy has in the way he says stuff, followed by showing horrendous evidence of his points, is just annoying.
Why aren't corporations, right now, pulling out of states that ban gender-affirming care for minors, even if their parents consent? This is worse than the bathroom bill. It's literally killing people.
Study establishes first causal link between anti-trans laws and suicide attempts. Okay, so this is an NBC article that talks about a study that recruited people through social media. So when I say that correlation does not equal causation, what I mean is that recruiting a bunch of terminally online people...
Dude, I think what's actually killing people is convincing them that there's something they're not and forcing them to go through chemical changes to alter their biology, which has so many fucking negative effects you wouldn't believe.
Your study might not lead to the most accurate result.
And the issue is, like, because having gender dysphoria will naturally have a link with depression and suicide, the more trans people there are, the higher the amount of like depression and anxiety and mental health disorders there will be. So I think when you say that, like, oh, these bills are what's causing the change, well, I think what the chicken become before the egg, right? It's like, is that what the phrase is? I don't actually know, but it's like there's more trans people, then there's more depression, and you can correlate the rise in depression to new laws, or you can say that there's just more trans people.
You know, considering the constant Trump derangement syndrome fear-mongering from the average TikTok user, like, this is the type of person that you're recruiting for your study.
Nose ring theory?
Opposition to trans rights will unfortunately continue to be a thing for years to come. But we shouldn't lose hope. We are on the right side of this. History is not kind to bigots.
Right, the ones with the good historical takes always have to announce that they're on the right side of history. I swear, this is like an archetype of internet person who knows nothing about politics, but is super arrogant in their beliefs.
China's communism. I've been to China.
China's not communist.
Huh?
China's not communist.
What are they?
They're a socialist country.
Socialist?
Yes.
Have you ever been to China?
Have I? No.
Let me tell you something. It is the most oppressed country I've ever been to.
Look, no. China's not oppressed. Look at China. China they have great social safety nets.
I was like, oh, I'm the only Asian person in the room, so it's like so weird to see somebody kind of like debate about a country that my mom is from. I would have to agree with John more in terms of like China being a communist country.
Even the Chinese girl said he was wrong. Though I think the real lesson here is to be more reserved in your opinion instead of firing out a bunch of blind accusations with very low accuracy. Especially when it only takes a few minutes of reading to disprove you. I mean, with all due respect, Dean Withers was much better at this. It took me hours per subject to fact check him. But
dude, I don't understand the Dean Withers show. You see his logo there? So his logo here, the Dean Withers show, you can see is like just a direct ripoff of Brett Cooper's. The and show share a font family. The and show share a font family. And then you have this sort of like, bunch of different fonts for each letter. And some of them are just different sizes as well. And this is just like a direct ripoff of Brett Cooper's thing. You know, I think it's just weird that he did that. I don't know why he did that, but he did. Like, it's literally, I would say, not a one-to-one, but it's pretty damn close.
More importantly, just because someone sounds smart doesn't mean they are. And because of that, when it comes to politics and research, I really think people need to set aside the emotional appeal of somebody or how grounded they sound, and instead focus more on the content of what they're saying. Like, Noah Samson is very good at emotionally appealing to people, but the minute you start asking questions, he stumbles for 2 hours against Vosh and never debates again. So when you watch internet influencers, at least to some extent, you should say, how do you know that? And if all they can do is show you the titles of 11 articles they almost certainly didn't read, then you probably shouldn't take their opinion too seriously. Also, maybe people shouldn't be getting their political takes from influencers who just graduated high school. Anyway, thanks for watching, follow me on Twitter, and I'll see you in the next video.
Well, I would say that it was a good video in the sense that I think he kind of got this guy and exposed him, but there was some stuff in here I didn't really understand. He was saying no one cares about men and women's sports, and there was another thing that he said, I don't know. But nonetheless, more right than wrong, I'd say. I do like using Dylan Mulvaney to clickbait, though. That's heat. That's actually heat.